What's going on, guys? It's Bad Soy here. I'm back with another beat breakdown. This time it's an original track. The song is called Angie Went to the Window, and it is the fourth song off my new EP, new mixtape, which is titled Cyberpunk Lofi Zip. Now, that's going to be linked down in the description, so you'll be able to listen to it before this video, after this video. It's available everywhere, and it'd mean the world if you checked it out. So, without further ado, let's take this song apart and see how it works. This is an exercise in layering. There are only two sections in this song. There's an A section and a B section. And I've never really made a song like this before, so the challenge was just adding instruments and different layers to keep it interesting. The song starts off with a whole lot of ambience, right? What I wanted to do was paint a picture, paint a mood. So it sounds like this. This is the ambience on its own. So we start with a neon sign. You have marketplace ambience. Then we bring in a siren. And you have your footsteps. And yeah, that's a whole little ambience section that doesn't come in anywhere in the song, but that's how you start it. That's how it gets started. The idea with the mixtape in general was, rather than just create like a lo-fi album that has elements of cyberpunk musically, I was like, cyberpunk is a whole genre. You have movies, games, shows, books, and obviously music. So why not reference the genre as a whole rather than just the music side of things? So I've really tried with each track to paint a picture. So let's get into the music side now. I feel like I've talked enough. We start with two pads that work side by side. The hopeless pad, which sounds kind of funny now that I say it out loud, sounds like this. So as you can see, that doesn't change for the whole A section. So to keep that interesting, we have it going side by side with another pad. This one's called the Cyber City pad, which I think is from the Sunset Cyberpunk Serum pack. Download it if you haven't. It's awesome. Shoutouts. And that sounds like this. So it sounds very eerie to me, or like very forlorn. It's like, it almost sounds like there's some vocals in there, some really washed out, reverby vocals. Sound very ghostly. I think it sounds awesome together. And really lends itself to the dystopian world of cyberpunk when you add that ambience back in. And this is what it sounds like. So the next thing we add in is the bass. So cyber bass. Now this is some legit 80s style, heavy electronic bass, and you'll hear this in most cyberpunk music. It sounds like this. So it's with the pads, we're really getting into that traditional cyberpunk feel, I think. So the next thing we add is the frantic arpeggio. Now there's a bit going on with this one, and on its own it sounds like this. Now you'll notice the arpeggio is panning from left to right, which is just a way to keep it interesting when majority of the musical elements so far are very centered. Now what happens with the arpeggio at the end here, which is kind of cool, is it transforms into a pad. So you'll notice this automation here is linked to Paddington, which is a patcher preset that you can download for FL Studio. And yeah, anything you feed into it will get changed into a pad. So it sounds like this. You can hear that the arpeggio is kind of being drowned out. And then we have the tail end of the pad. If I, for example, was to continue this pad, it would sound like this. You'll notice that there's no arpeggio, like there's no notes, it's just a sustained wash, which I think is pretty awesome. And that's all that one plugin, Paddington. So that's not how the song goes though, so let's get rid of it. There's now 3 pads going by the end of this section, so if you don't know what a pad is, it's essentially a textural thing, right? It's not a rhythmic percussion sound, it's not a lead line, it's a very ambient element to a song. You can turn them into melodies, but they usually take a while to expand and become a full sound. They'll start kind of quiet and build. So yeah, it's just an interesting transitional thing. We're building layers every 8 bars, but this is gradually building towards a new pad, which I think is cool. So altogether, it sounds like this. You can hear the sirens in the back, so this is all about creating an atmosphere, which I think is kind of cool. So the last thing we have is a reverb pluck. This is what it sounds like isolated. It's also extremely quiet when in relation to the rest of the instruments. But it has more notes in it. It descends 4 times instead of 2, which is what everything else is doing. So even though it's quiet, you kind of subconsciously can hear something in the background. You're like, oh yeah, there's a very quiet lead line there. And again, in context with everything else, it sounds like this. Now, what I think is really cool is even though we have this depressing, gritty cyberpunk feel, the chords and notes and samples, presets, with the exception of the bass, aren't very aggressive. They're kind of calming in a way. They're not like hitting you over the head. They're very the music. They swell. You know, they swell in volume. Which I think is cool. It means we still have that like relaxing lo-fi hip-hop element to it, even though this one leans more on the cyberpunk feel. At least for section A. Things are going to switch up when we get to section B, so let's keep moving along. So the next thing we have are some vocals. I believe the sample says, "I can't make the dreams go away." I don't know what that's implying. Moving along, it's a cymatic sample, and this is what it sounds like.
I can make
This is what it sounds like cut up. So this is again just another element that we add to keep it interesting. It's been mixed to be very dark in contrast to the rest of the song, and sounds like this in context with the other instruments. So it sounds as though it's coming through some kind of transition, like it is not a high quality sounding recording, even though it originally was. I've deteriorated it so it sounds, much worse, in a good way. Now this is where we add a new melody line in and a new instrument, which will carry over into section B, kind of bridging the two sections. So we still have our reverb pluck, our two pads, our bass, but we add in a guitar and synth lead that work together. So this is the guitar lead on its own. So again, this guitar lead has an insane reverb tail on the end, so I'm gonna stop that. But it's got reverb. It's very airy. There's a lot of high end that's just noise, and this is all to make it feel very for want of a better term, very low fidelity, lo-fi, right? But it's all kind of intentional. Like the point of cyberpunk, the way I've heard it described, is high-tech, low-life. So why can't we have some of that in the recording? You know what I mean? Then we add a synth lead in. So on its own, it's doing almost the same thing as the guitar. So essentially the same pattern, but one is panned left and one is panned right. So when we put them together, they cover both sides of the stereo image. And the synth has a plucky kind of attack, so that adds a little more strength behind the guitar. That was the idea anyway. But what's really neat is it sort of follows the same melody as the vocals, so we'll add those back in and you'll see what that sounds like. It's cool to have an instrumental echo of the vocal melody. The next thing we add is our first percussion element. It's very simple. It's just a ride that just plays so simple, but it's just to add the first rhythmic element, which is coming in almost halfway through the song. Just a little segue into section B. So simple. There's nothing to it. So altogether, in context, this is what it sounds like. So that is the entirety of section A. Now, there's a couple small things I want to mention before we get to section B. We have sound effects, quite a few sound effects. We're maintaining the ambience from before. We introduce a little breathing sound effect, which, I don't know, to be honest, I'm still torn on it. It sounds kind of creepy, the idea of someone breathing in your song. a little bit creepy, but it's also weirdly a cool, like, white noise style impact sound. So I don't know, I thought it was cool, I left it in. This is what it sounds like on its own. Oops. On its own. My Google search history, man, just people breathing. It was a weird time. And then all together it sounds like this. So it's not even overly loud in the mix, but I think it just gives it this weird kind of atmosphere. As I said, the whole point of this song is desperation. Conceptually, so anything we can do to make you feel, to make the listener feel kind of hopeless was the idea. We have some impact sound effects, impact and riser sound effects, which are just used as signposts. Every song has them. And then we've got a few transitional things which I want to draw your attention to. The first time the vocals play, there's a little bit of reverb, which masks this reverse vocal stab. But we actually get rid of the reverb in the second playthrough, right before section B. And that, I don't know, it just changes it. It's different to the first section, and it helps in the transition. It sounds like this. Very cool. We also have a gun cocking sound effect, which could be considered kind of cringe, I'm going to be completely honest, but it's, you know, you hear the gun sound effect in hip-hop, in so many things. Is it problematic? Maybe, but it's in there, and I think with the last element, this little tape stop, it kind of works. So the tape stop occurs, I believe, on the entirety of bus 2. Now, I've explained buses in my other production breakdown videos, which you should definitely go check out. But essentially, buses are overall tracks which your other tracks are routed to, routed towards. So, if, for example, I was to have a look at what the guitar is routed to, so we'll go to track 23. Track 23 is routed to track 21, which is then routed to bus 5. Bus 5 is then routed to the pre-master. So essentially, you want to group your instruments by buses, group your instruments together. So I'd have probably the pads going to bus 2, and the tape stop will then affect all of those pads, not just one of them, right? Because all of them are going to this bus. I hope that makes sense, but essentially, if we mute bus 1, 3, 4, and 5, you'll hear exactly what the tape stop is doing. So yeah, it essentially just operates as a pitch shift down, and that's, as I predicted, it's affecting all the pads. So altogether, it just creates a really neat transition into section A, and this is what it sounds like. We'll go from a little bit before, we'll go from here. So, yeah, tape stop, gun clicking, and reverse vocal. And that is our, as well as this riser down here, that is our transition into section B. So, section B, the second half of the song. We are still just following the same 2 notes. Now, the guitar becomes the focal instrument. Super fuzzy, super grungy, It's got a bit of that like 90s tone, I think, which is cool. Now, what is cool is it's the same two notes as the pad. I'll unmute these and you'll hear it. We'll just start from halfway. So, da-da, 1, 2. So it's the same two notes still. It's just got a different strumming pattern. So there's an alternating, but it's still those two notes, which I think is really awesome. The idea between this, the idea of this section, is if you are if you watching this, if you're familiar with the song "Never Fade Away" from the Cyberpunk 2077 soundtrack. That was like one of the big songs that they really pushed in marketing. And I thought it was neat how I just thought the guitar section of that song was so cool. And they actually use it as a kind of ambient music sting in the narrative of the game, which was just really cool to me. So I wanted to get that kind of sound, that tone. That was the inspiration behind it. If we keep the guitar soloed, we lose the cyber bass, but then introduce an 808. So at this stage of the song, it's almost becoming more hip-hop than it is cyberpunk, but that's still kind of fresh. It just helps to differentiate the moods a little. So I'll go from a bit earlier. So that 808 is doing most of the work in the low end of the frequency spectrum. So the other instruments that we have at this point are we still have the reverb pluck, which is a little louder now. So this is cool because it kind of becomes that really grainy cyberpunk lead, whereas in section A, it's just an ambient thing, which I think is kind of cool. And all I had to do to get that was just to boost the volume, which was fun. The next thing that we have, just in this first part of section B, is the drums. We fully introduce a proper drum pattern. And that sounds like this. So that's really cool. And then we again have a different sample that's been chopped up to be a little bit more of a breakbeat. The other elements of the drums, we have a crash sample. We have our hi-hats. Sorry, ride. And then we have our clap. Isolated, it sounds like this. And next we have a little gross beat section. Gross beat is a time manipulation plugin for FL Studio. So it essentially double times the hats. So it's cool because it double times twice in this drum section. Double times here, and then double times at the same time as the break beat. The first double time is it kind of foreshadows the breakbeat, which is, I think, is pretty cool. Altogether, it sounds like this. The next thing that we have is a new vocal sample. Now, what's really cool, this is a bit of FL Studio wizardry, is the vocals originally sounded like this, which I thought was cool, but it wasn't very cyberpunk. It felt a lot more R&B to me, which was not really, obviously, the vibe of this song. And I think it was mostly to do with the piano. So FL Studio has this really neat stem extraction feature, which I used on this and was able to just pull the vocals straight out of this sample without the piano, which was a little bit awesome, actually. But it sounds like this. We have a quick transition in, and then you'll hear it. No piano. And I don't know, I just got really excited about that. I wanted to show it off. In context, this is what they sound like. The last thing we add in at this point, we reintroduce the hopeless pad. The hopeless pad at this point is kind of occupying the lower to mid areas of the frequency spectrum. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially where all the instruments sit. So guitars are usually in the middle, bass is in the bottom, and any kind of lead or vocal lines you want up the top so they cut through, people hear them the most. The next and final thing is a guitar pluck. It sounds like this in isolation. Very soft lead line. And it's really just meant to reinforce the reverb lead from before. It's just another layer. It makes the reverb lead feel a little bit stronger. The next section, we just reintroduce some familiar elements. So again, as I said, this is just an exercise in layering. So we're now in section B, the song is coming to a close. We do a little throwback to the start of the song, or like the early parts of the song. We reintroduce the guitar lead and the vocals. So the end of the song essentially just has everything cut out of it again, but it's left really sparse. Now, we don't want to make it identical to the beginning of the song, which also had almost nothing in it, so we essentially switch out the pad for the guitar. We have the guitar, the reverb pluck, and the vocals, the vocal line still there, and that caps off the song. And that's the end of the track. It's literally just an exercise in layering and layering and layering. Only 2 sections, and that is how you make incredibly depressing, cyberpunk-inspired lo-fi hip-hop. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was an absolute blast to go through this song again. It's definitely like the simplest one on the mixtape, but I think it's the one where I achieved the objective the most, like creating a mood, creating an atmosphere, and really trying to tell some kind of story, or letting the listener tell their own story in this song. Now, yeah, as I said at the beginning of the video, the mixtape is available everywhere. It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify. It would mean the world if you could go check it out. It's a little project that I've been wanting to make for a while, and now it exists. And yeah, that'll all be linked down in the description. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks a bunch. I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive. I love doing these. Let me know if you'd like some more. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.